Hello everyone and welcome to Unacademy, and here we are back with the daily news analysis. And there has been some gap that we have got in the last 2 to 3 days if I'm not wrong. So what we will be doing today is that I will try to cover up those particular things also, so today's session could last a bit longer. So I will be requesting you all to bear with this particular thing today. Okay, and coming to today's session, right? So we will be taking up about two topics from the newspaper of Sunday, and there are some topics of yesterday, and there are some topics of today. So in total, we'll be covering all these particular things. That is something which I just would like to let you all know before we start the session of the day. Okay, a very good morning, everyone. A very good morning. And before we start the session of the day, there is one important thing about the Unacademy Plus subscription I just have to tell you, and later on we can continue with the discussion of the day. So this is for the first time, right? Very specifically from 13th to 17th of September, Unacademy has come across with a kind of offer where, you will be able to get a 10% of additional discount on the Plus subscription, along with the discount you will be getting using my code, that's Ajay IAS10. Along with the 10% of discount, you will get additionally 10% of discount on the Unacademy subscription in this particular week from 13th to 17th of September. And moreover, very soon there will be a hike will be there on Unacademy Plus subscription also, on all the different kind of Plus subscription. So if anyone is interested in taking the subscription, this will be the right time for you to take it up. And yes, Unacademy has also come across with various batch courses for you. We have 1 year batch courses, and we also have 2 year batch courses. So very specifically, everything has been planned with the top educators, in English as well as in bilingual as well as in Hindi. You have different courses that are being taken up by the various educators too. For example, I'll be also a part of batches where I'll be taking, disaster management, where I'll be taking science and technology, internal security and such kind of areas. So that would be much interesting for you also to be joining us too. And most interesting thing is that in Unacademy Plus, here you will be having a feature called raise a hand feature, and where if you raise a hand, we will be accepting you. So where you can directly talk to us in the session itself. That is something which is an amazing thing, we could say, right? And every Sunday you will have a combat, and this time also you will be having a combat on 19th of September. But this time you will have a scholarship of about 10 crore rupees. So how is that? You have to join using the code which is highlighted here. You will have to solve 56 questions in 60 minutes of time, and if you are the toppers of that particular session, you will be able to get certain kind of you will be able to get certain kind of benefits and discount on the Plus subscription and all. So this is something which you will be seeing here. Now a very good it's very good to see you all, very good to see you all back on the session, and we will be starting the session now. And before we start the first topic of the day, right now you must be knowing about this area, that if a person called A is going to a bank, okay, the purpose is to take a loan. So what will the bank see? Right, guys, let's answer this. What is something that the bank will be focusing on when a person is going to a bank to seek some loan from the bank? In general, the bank, what it requires is this: the repayment capacity of the person. Am I right? One thing that the bank will focus is on the repayment capacity of the person, right? That's the first thing. But how will the bank know about the repayment capacity? How will the bank know about the repayment capacity? So generally, the bank will look into the sources of income, isn't it? This is something which the bank will focus on. What is the source of income? And then they will also focus on what you call it as CIBIL score. Am I right? This is something which the bank will also be doing. So after looking at all these things, like the repayment capacity, the source of income, CIBIL score, then the bank will look after the collateral thing. But the biggest point here is that whenever you talk about a person to take some particular decision, in this kind of way, the data that is of a person is not stored at a single place. Am I right? Whenever I would like to take a person's data into consideration and I would like to offer a loan, the different data is stored at different places. Hope you got my point. I mean to say that the savings of a person, this data is stored at one place. The insurance if a person has, it is stored at one place. The mutual funds if he is investing, that is stored at one place. So different kind of data is stored at different kind of locations. As the data is stored in different locations, is it that easy for the bank to get a better understanding about this person's financial background and income sources? Absolutely not. So that is the reason why the Reserve Bank of India has come across with a particular method which they started calling it as a very 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 interesting mechanism called as account aggregators. What is it called as? Account aggregators. So what will they do? In simple terms, to understand the concept of account aggregators, that information of a person's financial data from various sources would be brought together and collated and kept at a particular place. In simple terms, the information of a person's data will be brought from various sources. For example, I have a bank account in SBI, ICICI, then they have in HDFC. So the information would be brought up at a single place, which involves different kind of regulators and will be kept there. And from there, it would be shared among the people who are needed. But again, you may say, sir, you're talking about information being stored at one place. Okay, you're talking about sharing of information and storing it at one place. The question that the people would ask here is that when you're storing this information, what about my privacy? Right? Yes, definitely. What about my privacy? That is the reason the information, whatever is taken, will be stored in the form of, what do you call it, as an encrypted document. And the most interesting point here is the information would be encrypted. And who is the owner of the data? Just because the information is stored with account aggregators doesn't make them the owner of a data. According to this particular proposal, the individual is going to become the owner of a data. I will be the owner of my data, not the account aggregator. Got it? So that is the next thing. And the other important point is that only with my consent the banks can share it. It's not like they can share whatever the way we want. Yes, even the debt information, if I have any previous loans, how is my repayment capability, all these kind of information could be taken into consideration and could be stored. But now some people may ask, sir, we already have a mechanism like CIBIL score, no? Why do we need something like this kind of case? For example, some people may also say, sir, if I want to know about the information of a person, I can take from the PAN card, no? Just from the PAN card of a person, I can get the information of the transaction that the person has done. But with the PAN card, you will be able to track the transactions which are of higher value. Am I right? You can track the transactions which are of higher value, not of lesser value. So what happens here? As a result, as the transaction you are taking into consideration are only of higher value, you will not be able to see the transactions of lesser value. So that could be addressed very well with this kind of mechanism. That is what called as account aggregators. So this is about the entire information. Okay, the benefit is that we will know, the banks will know every information about it, the credit worthiness of the person. Ultimately, that would be much easier, where you will be able to sort out this particular matter much better. Simple. That's it. There's nothing much in that particular topic. I hope that is clear. Yes? Now let's talk about the next topic. See, the first topic is so simple, we were able to finish it so fast. Now, the next topic that will be starting up here is that what is the common blood pressure of a person? What is the normal BP of a person? Normal BP. Yes, what people would say is 120/80. Am I right? This is something which what people would be generally saying. 120 by 80 is a common blood pressure of a person. So when you talk about something like 120 by 80 is a normal BP. But you know what? The worst thing that the country and the world is seeing right now is that people don't know much if they are having a high blood pressure, because it is very rare, especially the young people are not bothered about their BP, if I'm not wrong. Am I right? The young people are not bothered about their blood pressure because people don't even go and specifically get it checked. That's a common thing that we see in the current generation, in the current world too. So this is a very problematic thing. We need to take care of this in a very serious manner, because the hypertension could cause a very huge impact on the person's body. In simple terms, I'll tell you that when you talk about a person, whenever you take about this kind of things, when the blood pressure is too much, that would have an impact on the blood vessels. As a result, that may have an impact on a person in the heart related ailments also. So the hypertension is a very serious form. We need to control the BP. That's a very important thing. Now, true, even the food habits do actually matter a lot. But the current generation, you must be surprising. How is the current generation, especially the young people? People would be generally some people who are focused on education, they do study. Okay, they do study, and then eating, right? Then we have this particular bad habit these days called Netflix, where people watch a lot of movies and all, right? Especially not Netflix alone, you could say Hotstar, you could say anything, Amazon Prime or whatever the thing is. So you could say the OTT platforms, right? And then then they would be just passing the time and all. But how that happens, that may end up in such a kind of situation. People sleep somewhere at 2 to 3 a.m. in the night, and also in the morning they'll wake up around 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. for example. Now imagine how many hours of sleep. Hardly 5 to 6 hours of sleep, which is not enough for a person, because people would become restless. People would become completely irritated, because the sleep is very important thing. That is where the people would feel a bit relaxed, but unfortunately everything is gone. So we need to control the blood pressure. For that we have some methods. Okay, because you'll be surprised to see that as of now in the world, around 1.4 billion people across the world have been affected with respect to the high blood pressure. 1.4 billion people, you can understand the seriousness. But of this 1.4 billion people, only 14% have this BP under control. Okay, so many people who are having the high BP are unaware about this particular impacts. Number one, the biggest problem here is that many people who have high BP are unaware about that they have a high BP. And for those who are known, they are not on treatment, and only half of the people who are treated are controlling that too. So as I told you already, if the high BP is not controlled, that may actually have an impact on heart, brain, kidneys, blood vessels and all. So what you need to do for this is, we need to reduce the salt intake. The most important thing is reduce the intake of the salt, consumption of more fruits and vegetables, try to avoid or limit the intake of alcohol. Regular physical activity is very important, maintaining the healthy body weight, adequate water consumption, good sleep and stress reduction. Apart from that, you have to use what you call it as some particular medicines that are there. So the World Health Organization has come across with some specific guidelines about how you have to deal with it too. So they have gone to different kind of people from different areas. They have taken into consideration a lot of areas. Now the question is that should we take the hypertension into control just by measuring the BP, or should we take into consideration based on age, gender, smoking status, body mass, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, blood cholesterol and all? So absolutely, we need to look into the second thing is going to be very important, right? Because when you're talking about the people, we will know the better risk assessment has to be done. So when you do the proper risk assessment, it would be much easier for us to. So the most important thing is we need to go with the evidence informed, evidence based understanding about this kind of problem, and ultimately we need to deal with this problem. For example, they say that if there is any kind of blood pressure, for normal people, if that is going beyond 140/90, we need to take very seriously. For those people who are with the cardiovascular, they have to take 130. We have to focus on reducing these particular things. But unfortunately, the proper facilities are not there. Even dealing with the facilities and also dealing with the proper drugs is also very, very important. We need to try to reduce this particular BP. That is something which we have about that particular topic. Okay, so that is something which we have on that particular topic. Clear, everyone? Now, moving on to the next topic, it's about the youth. Now, the Chief Justice of India says youth can play a very important role in the society right now. One of the major reasons why he says is because there are a lot of young people among different kind of faith, among different kind of beliefs, among different kind of communities. All of these have fought a lot during India's independence movement. Yes, during the emergency days. So that is the reason why you are enjoying a lot of freedoms today. But the problem is that youth are unaware of the social realities and the challenges. So Chief Justice of India says we need to focus on those kind of things. So there are a lot of people who sacrifice their lives. There are a lot of people who sacrifice their careers. A lot of things. That is the reason why today we are enjoying these kind of rights. So he says youth should not be the selfish people. Rather, we should be the selfless people. And also, whenever you talk about something called religion, religion should not be the one which would divide the people. Rather, religion should be something which should talk about the common good and the tolerance. There is no religion which should focus on superstitions and rigidities. So what we need today is that we need to take into consideration Swami Vivekananda's teachings, and that is how the youth has to come out of these kind of things, says the Chief Justice of India. That is something which we have a very simple topic. And some time ago, if you know about it, that the Supreme Court has become very serious on the government because of the delays in appointing the members to the tribunals. So as the Supreme Court has become very serious on this particular matter, government finally has taken a decision where they have appointed 31 people as judicial, technical and accountant members to the different kind of tribunals like National Company Law Tribunal, we could say Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, and also there are about 250 posts which have been vacant at many important tribunals like National Company Law Tribunal, Debt Recovery Tribunal, Telecom Dispute Settlements Appellate Tribunal, Securities Appellate Tribunal and all. So they have decided this particular way that we would have to fill the vacancies because Supreme Court has become very serious. If you remember a few days ago we have discussed that the Supreme Court stated either we have to completely shut down. They have given three options. Number one, we have to completely shut down these tribunals, number one. Or number two, the option that we also have here is this, they have to make the appointments themselves. And number three is that file contempt on the government. This is something, the three important things that are taken into consideration. So that is why the Supreme Court remarks have become very serious. So they have went on to appoint some particular people too, but there are many more people who are yet to be appointed. And now they say very clearly the appointments will be done for 5 years from the date of assumption or till the age of 65 or until further orders to. And there are 7 accountant members also have been appointed. And for the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, they were taken for 4 years. This is something which they also have. Now, see, when a person gets admitted in a hospital, the doctor plays a very important role. But a doctor alone cannot take care of a patient all the time. But we also have the people called nurse. Am I right? Even the nurses do play a very important role for the early recovery of the people. Because doctors give instructions and nurses will follow them and ensure that the patients will become completely recovered. That is one of the very important things that we have got here. But when you talk about something like this, how is the education with respect to nursing? You know, the current system of nursing education that is going on is still based on the 1947 curriculum. This is the saddest reality. The current education system that is being taken up in the nursing education is still the 1947 curriculum. So this needs to be changed. And accordingly and finally, government has taken a decision in this regard, and finally they have come across with that particular change. So this would be implemented from January 2022, and they are going to make it a competency-based curriculum. So this has been changed in such a way that we have to bring up a kind of uniformity. A person who is doing nursing in Tamil Nadu should also get the same kind of education and nursing capabilities like the one who is in Delhi. So the point is there has to be uniformity in the nursing education very specifically. So that is the reason why they have brought up this kind of revamp, number one. And then medical ethics is something which has been introduced for the first time. Medical ethics is a very important area because they have to know what is ethical and what is not. So for the first time they have introduced this, and they also have got for credit based semester system, so that people will know about each and every area they can focus on. They have also introduced what is it called forensic nursing and nursing informatics using the computers and all. So all this has been done by the Indian Nursing Council based on the Indian Nursing Council Act, so that they have to bring up a kind of uniformity in the country. Now this definitely, they have used a word called dignity at 6 places, which also shows a kind of respect that a person has to do for the nursing education. But the other biggest problem, what is that? Now, instead of using the words we could say specially abled and all, it has used expressions like handicapped, mentally challenged and physically challenged. This has been criticized by some particular people too. But exception to that, this education has brought a lot of changes. So they have also brought up what is it called simulation based training also, so that the nurses will be able to get practical component, and students will be able to go to the clinical area after the compulsory training. And also they very specifically says that the Gazette does not permit the admission of non-science background students for the BSc nursing programs, and minimum qualifying marks for the entrance test shall be 50%. So it's like they have brought this kind of method. They will have assignments, seminars, micro teaching and all, so that these people would be very well aware about this kind of system. And the hospital norms also, they have stated very clearly that wherever the nursing education is going on, that must be at least 100 bedded hospital. Only then they will be able to get that particular thing too. And they cannot say that the hospital is superior and nursing is less. There is nothing like that. It is mandatory that institute must have their own building within 2 years of its establishment. Then they will be allowed for providing the nursing education also. So this is all about with respect to the nursing education change, and very, very, very important to bring up this kind of change, because in the recent past the government has been focusing on changes to what do you call it as education related things, and this is definitely one of the good transformation that the government is making in this particular regard, we could say. Okay, right, let's move to the next one. Now we have seen with respect to the matter of Afghanistan. Right now Taliban has allowed the women to go for getting education in the universities. But what did they say is that there has to be a separation at least by a curtain. And apart from that, what did they do? They also say women must cover their face, women must cover their hands. They say that there has to be separate classes for men and women. Without any doubt, you have to understand during 1996 to 2001 when Taliban was ruling for the first time, at that time, they have been more critical of women's education in particular. But this time they stated we will implement some better rule which would be less extreme. And they say the education minister says that we are ready to put an end to the mixed sex classes, which means both men and women shall not attend the university together. They have to be separate education system. And they say these people are Muslims and they are ready to accept it. And Taliban stated that women must wear an abaya robe and niqab. They must have separate, classes. So all these kind of things. But they say, right, the new rules would definitely affect because the number of staff who teach are also not much women are there. So to provide separate class is going to be a bit tough. And they also say if there is any male faculty teaching, so they say that even they have to use a curtain behind a male teacher or they have to use a technology so that male should not see the women and all these kind of things they are saying too. But still it's not going to be that simple for the women in Afghanistan. So this would take a lot of time and a lot of change. We just have to wait and see. That's going to be this particular topic. Okay, now we have seen the case related to the Pegasus, right? The snooping Israeli software called Pegasus. There has been a petition filed in the Supreme Court by some senior journalists. Now what is the output of it? What is the output of it? What did we achieve from this? So when you talk about this particular area, so as a petition has been filed, now the Supreme Court says we are ready to give some interim orders. But why Supreme Court is so soon in giving ready to this interim orders? The reason is because they have asked the government to submit, especially the cabinet secretary, to submit a detailed affidavit. A detailed affidavit has to be submitted. This is something the Supreme Court has asked the government to do. To which the Solicitor General stated no. And the reason why the Solicitor General stated no is because he says it's a matter of national security. If you are asking us to file a detailed affidavit, that would actually cause a very huge burden. So this has irked the Supreme Court, which stated very clearly no. We are not going to wait for your particular lessons of this. So Supreme Court stated we are ready to give some interim orders, but also stated in the future, in next upcoming few more days, in case if the Solicitor General would like to give an update about it, they could mention the case and give this particular update, says that they could do. But to this, to this particular thing, they made it very, very clear. They made it very, very clear that they must submit an affidavit. But the government is not ready to submit an affidavit. The government is not ready to submit an affidavit yet. So they say rather than submitting an affidavit, they very specifically say that we are going to bring up a committee which is independent of the government, where they would submit, a committee would be created, they would submit a report to the Supreme Court directly. Okay, so what they do here is that when they specifically say that they are ready, very specifically they say that they are ready to do this particular thing with appointing a committee which is independent of the government, right? They say very specifically as a government they are not yet ready with respect to these kind of submission of affidavit. So they said a committee would be appointed, but the Supreme Court is not ready to accept the same thing. So which is going to become serious, and the members who have been the petitioners were also not very happy with the kind of thing. They say that government must do some of these kind of things, and they must actually submit a very detailed affidavit, to which they are not yet ready to do this. This could be a bit challenging thing in the near future, but the Supreme Court says that we are concerned about as privacy of the people too. But the government also stated yes, we are also concerned. It's not like we are completely going to do as we want to. but they say that it's about a matter of national security. So right now we are not going to submit a detailed affidavit. That is all there in that particular news. Now, with respect to the clean energy, India has been trying its best to come up with the clean energy technologies and all. And the United States of America is going to collaborate with India to install about 450 gigawatts. The United States of America is right now focusing on installing of 450 gigawatts of clean energy or renewable energy by 2030. But when you look at this, the U.S. Special Representative, Special President, Presidential Envoy for the Climate, Mr. John Kerry, he was also the former, we could say Secretary of State, in fact. So he actually has come to India to discuss about the green energy projects and all. Right now, India's installed, power capacity would be about 476 gigawatts by 21-22, and that would go by 817 gigawatts by 2030. So he has come on official visit and will be meeting the ministers and many industrialists, so that we need to bring up a transition from the, what do you call it, as a renewable, non-renewable sources to a renewable source of energy. That is something which they have stated. So he actually did speak at a kind of public function which was organized with respect to the launch of what is the launch is about climate action finance mobilization dialogue. So they have been focusing on how US and India can collaborate on this particular energy transition thing, about the green energy things and all. So they stated there are three important pillars. One will be the climate action pillar, where we have to take up the joint proposals and have to see how we could reduce emissions in the next 10 years. That's the first pillar they focused on, called climate action pillar. And the second thing they talked about is called as setting up of a roadmap to achieve 450 gigawatts in the transportation, buildings and industry. So whatever the kind of energy that we have brought up right now is a different one. So they say very clearly that they would be taking about 450 gigawatts in the case of transportation right now. So with respect to the building industry, they say they would like to see a kind of a transformation here too. And the last one they also talk about is called as finance pillar, because for doing any of these kind of things, the most important thing is paisa, isn't it? Money is more important for everything. So we have to look into this kind of finance pillar, where we have to take up the finances from different kind of things. And the US even stated that there are 6 banks in US which are ready to invest about 4.5 trillion in the next decade towards the clean energy. So that's a kind of a transformation that we could see. But ultimately, the one major purpose of the visit is this, that we need to get carbon neutral. The world has to become carbon neutral by 2050. This is something, a proposal that John Kerry has brought up with, so which we also call it as net zero. What does it mean? The amount of carbon emissions that are being released will be absorbed by the country. So ultimately, a country, whenever it's coming with the emission, there would be zero emissions literally. So that's what zero emissions, as in they will they will release the emissions and they will also take up the emissions. So there would be no net emissions would be coming up from them. That is something which the world has been aiming for. Okay, so that's one thing we have. So just give me 1 minute. Okay. So we have topics like government curbs funding for some organizations, some NGOs. Supreme Court calls for the reforms in the divorce related things, and climate change. So 3 more topics we are having. So please do have some patience for that particular time. We'll be able to address that. Okay. Now, earlier the government has actually cancelled the registration of very important organization called as Greenpeace, where they stated Greenpeace cannot receive the foreign funds. But now about 10 American NGOs, Australian and European NGOs, which dealing with the area of environment, climate change and child labor issues, have also been restricted. Restricted as in they are not stopped from getting the foreign funding, but they stated they have placed in a list called as prior reference category, which means if they are getting any foreign funding, first that information will be given to the Ministry of Home Affairs, and once they clear it, then only the fund would be credited into the bank accounts of them. So about 10 organizations have been taken here in this particular case, and they stated that this is mandatory so that we could actually prevent certain kind of things. Because for the recent past there has been a kind of pressure on India that they would like to increase their intended nationally determined contributions. There has been a pressure that is coming upon India. But India is one certain kind of country which is specifically focusing on usage of coal a lot. Am I right? So with respect to the usage of coal and all, India has been using the coal a lot. We need to focus on restricting this particular thing. So many countries are putting a pressure on India to reduce this particular coal. But now, as a result of this, there are some NGOs in this which have actually taken this particular amount whatever they are getting and trying to organize certain kind of demonstrations against the government using the funds they are getting from the foreign funding, so which is basically not allowed under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. So government says we are going to put certain kind of restrictions on them. Only upon verification they would be able to get this particular things. That is something which they have brought. Okay, now what are the grounds that could be taken into consideration for granting a divorce to a couple? There are a lot of grounds. There are a lot of grounds for that. And one of the very important ground is that leprosy, it used to be, but with some kind of amendments the concept of leprosy has been removed. So that is something which happened. But some time ago the Supreme Court has used its own power to grant divorce to a couple on the concept of irretrievable breakdown of marriage. That is, at any point of time their marriage cannot be brought together, they cannot be associated anymore. So earlier this was not a ground at all for the divorce of a marriage, but now the Supreme Court is stating that the legislature is not yet focusing on these kind of things. So they say that there has to be reforms have to be brought up in the grounds for the divorce. So society is not accepting the divorce considering what is happening with respect to the marriage, but they say we need to focus more on and bring up the reforms in the divorce related things, and we have to add the irretrievable breakdown of a marriage as a ground for divorce. That is something the court stated. A lot of allegations and litigations are coming up against a spouse. That could also be taken as a kind of a cruelty. For example, a husband bothering a wife, torturing her, so that is a ground for divorce. But the way that's going on right now is a serious thing. So right now this judgment has come in a case where the wife left on the wedding day itself. The court stated she has gone to initiate complaints and allegations against her spouse. So this shows very clearly it's a completely irretrievable breakdown of marriage and cruelty. We have to take this and bring up some reforms in this particular case, says the Supreme Court. That is about this particular topic. Clear everyone? Everyone following, I guess? If there is any doubt, let me know. Okay. Please do not hesitate in asking the questions. Yeah. Then we have one last topic of the day. Yes. We have one last topic of the day. That's about the climate change could cause 216 million people to migrate, says the World Bank. So climate change may push about 200 million people to leave their homes in the next 3 decades, in the next 30 years, and that would create some migration hotspots, says the World Bank, if the world is not taking any action to reduce the global emissions. If you are not focusing on bridging the developmental gap, the world would suffer a lot, says the World Bank. So this report has been stated very clearly. So they say that by 2050 there would be climate migrants because of the kind of change in the kind of climate situation, the global warming and all. We could see the climate migrants coming up too. So there is a lot of emissions, unequal development going on. So that may make about 216 million people move within their own countries in 6 regions, they say. And regions includes Latin America, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Eastern Europe and Central Asia, South Asia and East Asia and the Pacific. So they say, even if you talk about very less emissions, if you talk about inclusive and sustainable development, still around 44 million people would still leave their homes. So the most vulnerable region is about Sub-Saharan Africa, where that is going to be desertified. The coastline is completely affected. People dependent on agriculture would be impacted. North Africa is also another region. And in South Asia, Bangladesh would be affected by the flood and crop failures. About half of the climate migrants with 19.9 million people would be moving out, mostly number of women. So they say this is a very serious matter that needs to be taken very, very, very serious, they say. So that is all about the topics we have for the day. Okay, so that is all we have for the topics of the day. And again, I would like to stress on this particular thing in the last, that right now from 13th to 17th of September, Unacademy is offering an additional special discount along with the 10% discount you'll be getting using the referral code which is highlighted here. So that's going to be a 20% of discount on Plus, Iconic as well as the combo subscriptions too. So that is all for the day, and I'll be seeing you all tomorrow. And before we end the session, I just would like to let you all know that Unacademy is taking up a kind of a prelims related special classes today on the Unacademy platform, and I'll be taking a session at 2 p.m. as usually on the MCQ session for the prelims 2021. So that is all for the day. Thank you so much and have a great day, and Jai Hind everyone.